just told me you weren't going to be here, and I said, no, she's right there.
Mary joins us in cyberspace.
Yes, I am.
There you go. Oh, your camera went off.
I know. We're having trouble with this.
Okay, well, you can still stay with us. All right.
Well, we got it. Let's start. I guess Weldon wants us to read this passage from the Valley of Vision. So we'll get started. So hopefully we can get enough time for discussion. This morning it's titled The Awakened Sinner. Would someone read this for us, please? And we'll have a brief discussion.
Okay, let's see here. Okay. Oh, my forgetful soul, awake from thy wandering dream. Turn from chasing vanities, look inward, forward, upward, view thyself. Reflect upon thyself. Who and what thou art, why here, what thou must soon be. Thou art a creature of God, formed and furnished by him, lodged in a body like a shepherd in his tent. Dost thou not desire to know God's ways? O God, thou injured, neglected, provoked benefactor, when I think upon thy greatness and thy goodness, I'm ashamed at my insensibility. I blush to lift up my face, for I foolishly err. Shall I go on neglecting thee, when every one of thy rational creatures should love thee and take every care to please thee? I confess that thou hast not been in all my thoughts, that the knowledge of thyself as the end of my being has been strangely revealed. But I have never seriously considered my heart needing. But although my mind is perplexed and divided, my nature perverse, yet my secret disposition still desire thee. Let me not delay to come to thee. Break the fatal enhancement that binds my evil affections, and bring me to a happy mind that rests in thee. For thou hast made me and canst not forget me. Let thy spirit teach me the vital lessons of Christ, for I am slow to learn, and hear thou my broken cries.
All right, the title is The Awakened Sinner. Any quick thoughts on those? On what we read?
I'm convinced that we can't really understand the righteousness of God. We're learning, we're being sanctified, and we learn. But I think we have sins so deeply embedded that are so common to us that we don't even recognize them.
When I read this and look at this, I think of one word, conviction. And that's a work of the Spirit, right? In this prayer, the person who authored this prayer obviously has come upon conviction and repentance. So in order of salvation, that's a very important step. But that's the work of the Holy Spirit. Do you think someone can come to that conviction without the prompting of the Holy Spirit?
Never.
Well, that's what he points out in the end, to let that spirit teach me the vital lessons of Christ.
So this precedes, you come to this conviction, you repent, and then salvation comes. Any other thoughts? I like these very much. Weldon, we're all set.
Mary, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you.
What we should do before Weldon comes up, let's pray for our Sunday school class this morning. Any volunteers on that?
The Spirit of the living God be here amongst us today. Touch our minds, touch our hearts, draw us closer to thee as we watch this video. And Lord, again, help us keep our eyes upon you to walk the path of life that you've set before us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Is that a new speaker?
It's a different one. It runs off the USB rather than.
Okay. So what was our homework last week?
Philosophy.
Yes, philosophy indeed. So, who did their homework? We'll start with Mary if she has it, since you're on the video and you're always very diligent to do it.
Well, this one kind of tripped me up, but the only thing I could think of was the Pope's announcement of blessing same-sex marriage, like he's just throwing out the Bible and what it teaches to do his own thing. And I just I was appalled. It's just that God doesn't matter anymore. Pope doesn't believe what he said in the Bible, that he created them male and female and to procreate. And there's no way you can do that same-sex marriage. Sorry.
Is that the only one that you have? that you wanted
That's
to-
the only thing I have.
Okay, who else?
I think an overview of all of that is that they've moved from God and absolutes into what man thinks in all different ways. And it would go on forever, in the ways that they do it. But man makes the decisions without the absolute of God.
So that's it would have been better for you to go last because that's an excellent segue into today's lesson with, there's a lot of.
Sorry.
What's that?
I said, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, not you. I was talking to Leanne. That hers would have been very, very good to be last because she was speaking on relativism. And today's lesson has a lot to do with relativism. So keep that thought. Who else? How about the Reformation? This is Reformation Sunday. What was the Reformation about? And, we want to get into sort of, and even though it was 500 years ago, what was going on at the church, in the church at that time that, you can say, how has that philosophy impacted the church? Well, I would say in some senses, in a positive way, that, there's been this Reformation that's coming back to Scripture, the five solas. So
That was his whole point in yelling at it. He didn't want to just throw the whole church out. Like, he said, I'm not baptized. What was going on?
exactly.
They were fragmented.
I think early on, the early church fathers, some of them, Origen, certainly Philo of Alexandria, they were Neoplatonists. So they tried to take this dualism, this Greek thought, and merge it into the church dogma and gospel. And it became sort of a synthesis of these two things. And the Reformation basically came against that and elevated God's word to the absolute central truth and authority. That was a big change.
Absolutely. What else do we have? Maybe some stuff going on today, today's church. Apart from Mary's very appropriate point.
That church with the rainbow door somewhere down.
In Mecklenburg County, hopefully, yeah.
The what?
There's a church, he said, I don't know where it was, in Mecklenburg County. They
Oh,
have a rainbow door.
Oh,
The
yeah,
whole
that's,
church.
I think it's Woodlawn Baptist.
They're not as.
I think our society, and I think that Mary mentioned certainly what the Pope Francis said, and I think that's correct. But it's just evidence that the Enlightenment, although it happened centuries ago, the humanist thought has became prominent in our society. The church now wants to adapt a lot of the church to the society so that it'll be popular and that, and they've embraced that. Certainly same-sex union is a prime example of that.
We've missed the fact that people that are advocating for same-sex marriage, people that want that, have a deeper problem. And society, the culture today wants to meet that with programs and not with the change of heart. And that's the gospel.
That's fair. So I'm going to cabbage on to that. So one of the things that I had taken away from that with regards to philosophy and relativism, and that's exactly it. It's the relativism and the absence of absolute truths is the experiential versus deep thinking. So as we read what the Puritans, our forebears, had written, and we think, wow, we don't really think that way. And then you commented on that several times. We really don't think this way anymore. And we're not challenged to. But, in the church, and I say the church in the aggregate, so virtually all denominations, that people want to gear toward experiential. So to your point, well, let's treat the symptom, but not the core, the root of the symptom, right? Another extension of that, though, is and we'll kind of touch on that in today's lesson. What about worship music? You know, how many churches today are, hey, let's have a rock concert, and people say, is that worshipful? And I'm not saying that the music is bad or necessarily the lyrics are bad, but is it worshiping God, you know, and sort of thinking through that and what God put in his, what happened to you?
I should look back.
Well, then it would really stand out. I would have noticed it right away. I'm sorry.
I had a basal cell skin cancer removed. It's okay, but it's all stitched up and bruised.
All right, but things are good then.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just noticed that.
You know, it's interesting, Walden, when I look at that, when I was a little guy in the Catholic Church, and I think a lot of people believe this as Christians, what happens in salvation is when I die, my body decays and my soul goes and lives forever with the Lord in this spiritual, non-material kingdom. But the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible said we're going to be resurrected physically and live in a physical New Jerusalem. So that's the idea of the Greek dualism, where the soul departs from the body, the transmigration soul. And when I was a little guy in the Catholic Church, that's what we were led to believe.
That was
That's pure Greek.
it is indeed, and in fact, that was declared a heresy of the Gnostics at that time as well, that very thing. So it's interesting how that would have continued on. So the worship music, and then the other thing about relativism, truth, and this ties back to what Dennis was talking about earlier, truth by one's own measure, and not by scripture. So what is your yardstick? And then the whole idea of, well, without any absolute truths, well, we would say, I don't have my Bible handy, but we would say, this is the absolute truths. And in fact, our catechism says it in its original form. So obviously there are things that get translated wrong or not quite exactly the way it was intended and so forth, but this is our absolute truth. So when you're able to index it back to something, like Steve was talking about earlier, well, the Constitution, well, that should be our touch point. That's everything with regard to law in our country should have that litmus test of, is it constitutional or is it not constitutional? So sort of very much those things. And then also, and this has gone back many hundreds of years, but really through the Enlightenment in particular, that scripture is not the word of God. So think about that. So if scripture is not the word of God, or Jesus was just a good guy that maybe we should just use as an example, Steve was talking about that in this sermon, then what are we here for? Any others? Did you have one?
I didn't have any problem.
Okay, that's right.
They say that Jesus was a good teacher, but I swear they don't understand what he taught. Because,
Just bits and pieces,
yeah,
just
love
bits and
love your
pieces.
neighbor.
Yeah.
Everything is love. There's no, and have you ever been to a funeral where anybody was even considered that they would go down rather than up?
No,
They live in two levels. They want to be human down here, but they always want something transcendent. They're searching for it, but they won't acknowledge it. Like one of the policemen that was killed, his wife came on this explanation that she tells his little daughter that he is now an angel in heaven. That sounds lovely, but it's not true. And there you are. Truth hurts. Truth is horrible to face, square in the face. We're going to run into it in the medical world too, because you're going to have, Craig said when he had his gallbladder operation, it said very nicely that they would treat you as you were born. If a man comes in and declares he's a woman, they will treat him as he was born. Now, you think about that. They said, I read an article where COVID is, men are much more susceptible to COVID than women because of, and I don't understand all the medical terms. But if a man comes in to be treated as a woman, is he capable of talking to this invisible thing and saying, you can't infect me because I am a woman now? I mean, what's medical science gonna do with this? If there's no absolute truth.
It's true, absolutely. So Joan, did you have any homework that you wanted to share? Not to put you on the spot, I
Hit us
just,
with some
Wait a
philosophy,
minute, I'm
John.
still like jumping.
if you had done the work, I wanted to give you the opportunity, so.
Had some, did you talk about the Pope? Okay,
Yes, we did.
okay, and that's
Extensively.
done. That's all I had.
You treat her as majesty.
Great minds think alike, Mary.
That's right.
Go ahead.
You and Mary are
Was all
together.
the good from
You
here?
stop and think about that, what that man said.
Monet, Renoir, Pissarro, Sisley, and Degas were following nature, as it was then called, in their painting. They were impressionists. They painted only what their eyes brought them. But was there reality behind the light waves reaching their eyes? After 1885, Monet carried this to its conclusion, and reality tended to become a dream. With Impressionism, the door was open for art to become the vehicle for modern thought. As reality became a dream, Impressionism began to fall apart. These men, Cézanne, Van Gogh, Gauguin, Seurat, all great post-impressionists, felt the problem, felt the loss of meaning. They set out to solve the problem, to find the way back to the reality, to the absolute, behind the individual things, behind the particulars. Ultimately, they failed. I am not saying that these painters were always consciously painting their philosophy of life, but rather that in their work as a whole, their worldview was often reflected. Cézanne reduced nature to what he considered its basic geometric forms. In this, he was searching for a universal which would tie all kinds of individual things in nature together. But this gave a broken, fragmented appearance to his pictures. In his bathers, there is much freshness, much vitality, an absolute wonder in the balance of the picture as a whole. But he portrayed not only nature, but man himself in fragmented form. I want to stress that I am not minimizing these men as men. To read Van Gogh's letters is to weep for the pain of this sensitive man. Nor do I minimize their talent as painters. Their work often has great beauty indeed. But their art did become the vehicle of modern man's view of fractured truth and life. As philosophy had moved from unity to fragmentation, so did painting. In 1912, Kandinsky wrote an article saying that insofar as the old harmony, that is, a unity of knowledge, had been lost, that only two possibilities remained: extreme abstraction or extreme naturalism. Both, he said, were equal. With this painting, modern art was born. Picasso painted it in 1907 and called it Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. It unites Cézanne's fragmentation with Gauguin's concept of the noble savage, using the form of the African mask, which was popular with the Parisian art circle of that time. In great art, technique is united with worldview. And the technique of fragmentation fits well with the worldview of modern man. A view of a fragmented world and fragmented man, and a complete break with the art of the Renaissance, which was founded on man's humanist hopes. Here, man is made to be less than man. Humanity is lost. Speaking of a part of Picasso's private collection of his own works, David Douglas Duncan says, "Of course, not one of these pictures was actually a portrait, but his prophecy of a ruined world. But Picasso himself could not live with this loss of the human. When he was in love with Olga and later Jacqueline, he did not consistently paint them in a fragmented way. At crucial points of their relationship, he painted them as they really were, with all his genius, with all their humanity. When he was painting his own young children, he did not use fragmented techniques and presentation." I want you to understand that I am not saying that gentleness and humanness are never present in modern art. But as the techniques of modern art advanced, humanity was increasingly fragmented. The opposite of fragmentation would be unity. And the old philosophic thinkers thought they could bring forth this unity from a humanist base. And then they gave this up. And the modern thinking has accepted fragmentation as a defeat, really. A defeat that human mentality, beginning from itself, can bring forth a unity of thought and of life. Now, by unity, what we mean is that which would include all of thought and all of life. And it can be achieved if indeed God has spoken and has not been silent. And in giving us the facts that man couldn't find for himself, there is a unity inside of which all that marvelous diversity, which then man can study, has a unified place, whether it's in knowledge or in values and in life. It was Dadaism which carried the concept of everything being matter of chance to its logical conclusion, of the ultimate absurdity of everything, including humanity. This is Marcel Duchamp's Nude Descending a Staircase. Duchamp perhaps understood most clearly and consciously the absurdity of all things, including man, on the basis of modern man's worldview. Here he carried fragmentation further. The human being disappeared completely. He realized that this absurdity of all things included the absurdity of art itself. This is one of his ready-mades. He took any object near at hand and simply signed it. The philosophers from Rousseau, Kant, Hegel, and Kierkegaard onward had given up a hope of a unity of life and of knowledge, and had come to a fragmented concept of reality. Then the painters painted that way. However, the artists, being sensitive men, came more quickly to the understanding of what the end of this view would be, and that is that all things are absurd. The American Jackson Pollock is perhaps the clearest example of deliberately painting in a way that says all is chance. This is how Pollock went about creating some of his art. Thus, his paintings were a product of chance. But wait, is there not order in these lines of paint? Yes, because you see, it is not really chance that shaped his canvases. The universe is not a random universe. It has order. The movement of this swinging can of paint follows the order of the universe itself. The universe is not what these painters said it is. It was a bankrupt humanistic philosophy which first taught that reason leads to pessimism and that optimism is only to be found in the area of non-reason. This basic idea, art, and then to classical music, and later to popular music. It started with Beethoven's Last Quartets. You could not call these modern, but there was a shift from the previous music. In France, Claude Debussy opened the door for modern music. Many of us have a profound admiration for his music and enjoy it very much indeed. But Debussy did open the door, not to non-resolution, as the German composers did, but to fragmentation, a fragmentation parallel to the fragmentation in painting. A fragmentation which was a great influence on almost all the following composers of classical music, as well as the later forms of jazz and rock. In Germany, after Beethoven's quartets, came Wagner and Mahler, then Schoenberg with his 12-tone row. Here's perpetual variation, but never resolution. This is Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. You're listening to the published score of electronic music. Concern with the element of chance was part of Stockhausen's work. This ties him in with John Cage.
C'est un
Cage believed the universe is a universe of chance. To express this, he produced music by chance. Cage's music turned out to be sheer noise. Significantly, he entitled this composition Music for Marcel Duchamp. John Cage was another one who could not live with his concept of a chance universe because it does not fit the universe which exists. Cage was an expert in the knowledge of mushrooms. He himself said, "I became aware that if I approached mushrooms in the spirit of my chance operation, I would die shortly." His theory of the universe did not fit the universe that exists. Why is the airplane carefully formed and orderly, and what Cage produced is utter noise? Because the airplane must fly in the universe that exists. And there are orderly flow lines in the universe that exists. The universe is not what Pollock in his paintings and Cage in his music said it was. And because Cage's music does not fit what man is either, it had to become increasingly spectacular to keep us interested. Hey! What a contrast to Bach, who had much diversity and yet always resolution. Bach, as a Christian, believed that there was resolution for the individual and for history. As the music that came out of the biblical teaching of the Reformation was worldview, so the worldview of modern man shapes modern music. Is this still art? Is it not rather a bare philosophic intellectual statement, separated from the fullness of who man is and what the universe is, tending to be only a bare intellectual statement rather than a work of art? It often has become anti-art art. After philosophy, art, and music, poetry, the novel, and drama became the vehicle for these ideas. In the English-speaking world, T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland came first.
Le Prince d'Aquitaine la Tour Abolique. These fragments I have shored against my ruin. Why, then I'll fit you. Hieronymo's mad again. Data, Dayadvam, Damyata. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
You see, he matches a fragmented message with a fragmented form of poetry. Just as Picasso opened the way for a fragmented concept of life in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, so fragmented poetry in the English-speaking world began with T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. Later, Eliot became a Christian, and his form of writing changed from that of the Wasteland. More and more, philosophy was expressed, not as formal statements of philosophy as such, but rather in the novel and other art forms. Sartre wrote Nausea, Camus, The Stranger, and The Plague, and Simone de Beauvoir, L'Invité. In the 60s, many of the basic philosophic statements were made through the cinema. And being carried by the cinema, they reached a far wider circle of people than had ever been the case through painting or literature, let alone through the writings of the philosophers. Among these films were Silence and the Hour of the Wolf by Bergman, Juliet of the Spirits by Fellini, Blow Up by Antonioni, Belle de Jour by Buñuel. They showed pictorially and with great force what it is like if people are only machines, and also what it is like if people try to live in the area of non-reason. In the area of non-reason, there is no way to distinguish between right and wrong, or even between what is objectively true and that which is illusion or fantasy. A good example is Antonioni's Blow Up. The advertisement for the film reads, "Murder without guilt, love without meaning." In this film, there are no certainties concerning moral values and no human categories either. Blow Up has no hero. All one has is Antonioni's non-hero. All there is the camera, which just goes click, 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 and the human factor has disappeared. Some of the films of that period went even further. The Last Year of Marienbad, Juliet of the Spirits, The Hour of the Wolf, Belle de Jour. They were saying something even more profound. They were saying that as modern man leaps into the area of non-reason to try to find his optimism without reason, that he not only does not have any categories for moral or human values, but he does not have any certainty upon which to distinguish between reality and illusion.
Picture has a realistic line. They are no dreams. They are
fantasies of the spirit. There's no difference between the dream and the reality.
Pronti a poco. Marisa, quando prendi mettete un po' di fantasia in quello che fate, poi vi devo dire tutto millimetro per millimetro. Cimenta è là.
It is my only way to live in reality. You know, it's for a creature. I think that what he does is only reality.
E urlate l'altalena dell'amore, tante volte dovete dire l'altalena dell'amore. Pronto? Come on!
To don't give meaning to the reality means that you don't understand no more reality. And reality can appear also like a monstrum, things without any meaning.
Bergman was a clear case at this point. He directed The Hour of the Wolf, where one cannot tell the difference between what is real and what is fantasy. Was what was being presented really happening, or was it in the mind of one of the characters? If people begin only from themselves and think that they live in a universe in which there is no personal God to speak, a universe such as Bergman indicated in his film Silence, then they have no final way to distinguish between reality and fantasy or illusion. But Bergman, like Sartre and Camus, could not live consistently with his own position, and therefore the background music for the film Silence is Bach's Goldberg variations. Bergman said, "There's a small, holy part of the human being where music speaks." Bergman also said that while he was writing the script for the film Silence, that he had the music of Bach's Goldberg variations playing in his home, and the music interfered with that which was being set forth in that film. The Christian knows why music speaks. He knows the people are not a product of chance. The people are made in the image of God. And on this basis, it is understandable that music is music to man. And because God has spoken in the Bible, there is not silence. And there are certainties concerning moral values and human values. And there are categories upon which to distinguish between reality and fantasy. For the people with the humanist position, this is not so. Within the humanist position, there is no base for knowing. Christianity is not romantic. The Bible's not romantic about man. Man is seen as fallen. Man is seen as rebellion. Man is seen as rebellious against God with all the goodness of God and with all the knowledge he has. On one hand, from the surrounding universe and its form and the mannishness of man, and on the other hand, from the more detailed knowledge of the Bible and the revelation in Christ. Man is a rebel. And we know Christian does not romantically think that this can be just leapt over. But having said that, a Christian is not a pessimist. He's not a pessimist on two levels. First of all, history's going someplace. And a part of the Christian message is that Christ is coming back. And this is the final solution. But every Christian who really understands the Scripture, also every generation, he is waiting and fighting and struggling and doing all that he can, not only to see individuals become Christians, but the culture touched by these individual Christians.
And the humanism. In fact, I was kind of thinking back, and they touched on it a little bit, but you know, back in the day, and I guess probably to some degree now, you remember seeing these sort of indie films and those films out of Cannes in France, you know, that kind of, you know, the hero or heroine, well, whether there was one or not, everybody dies and it's all fatalistic. And then of course you have at the very end, you know, just made artistic, right? And everybody's supposed to applaud and it makes it all wonderful and everything. I don't know if anybody ever saw any of those silly movies, but fortunately, I would say fortunately anyway, that with all of the bad things that have come out of Hollywood, I'd say one good thing is that most of our movies still have that undercurrent of American optimism. And you have the people who are, here's the hero or the heroine, and the good guy always wins, or, you know, generally speaking, and you go through things and you don't have this fatalism and humanism that you typically have out of these other sort of genres that he spoke to in this segment. I wanted to call out very quickly on, and in fact, this will be your homework, I didn't write it, but as well, but inconsistency. So he's talking about the different things and how the one guy, remember he was talking about it, what was his name? You were just singing him. Gage, whatever his name. So I'm sure one of y'all has that on 8-track. I don't know. Anyway, here he is out picking mushrooms, and you know he's talking about, well, he was living inconsistent with his worldview. You know, what is his worldview? Well, everything's by chance. Well, if everything's by chance, then if I eat this mushroom, I'm going to die. And, you know, he's living inconsistently. So as I think about, I don't know if y'all have ever read Ayn Rand. I recommend it if you haven't. So she was from the Soviet Union and came to the U.S. in the 50s, I think it was, and she has some. They're really excellent books, and then you read through them, and maybe you've seen the movies. Both of these are on Amazon. This is in 3 parts, actually.
Polish John Galt.
Yes, yes. But there's so much in it that you go through it, and you just have to scratch your head. And so there's this optimism. There's this, you know, where does this fortitude come from? And these, you know, really good things. And you think, you know, if you didn't know that she was an atheist, an avowed atheist, you really wouldn't get that from her writings because it's very inconsistent with an atheistic worldview. We have The Matrix as well. I mean, a huge redemption story in that movie and the trilogy or whatever. And there's a lot of decidedly, and I want to be very clear on all of that as well. There's and Hollywood in general, there's a lot of decidedly very unbiblical things. Okay, so I'm not holding these up as say these are wonderful and all that, but I will say that the undercurrent, the storyline, really is that of redemption, in particularly The Matrix. But Lord of the Flies, you remember the noble savage we talked about last week. Lord of the Flies is the embodiment of that. Oh my goodness. I mean, I forget who the author of that is, but I mean, I think I had nightmares about that after reading it. And the original movie was worse than the remake that they did in the 90s or whatever. And the book is even worse than both of them. So yet somehow I guess they still allow that, but we can't read Huckleberry Finn in our schools, but whatever. So going back, I left this up here from last week. Man is the measure of all things, and this is from Protagoras. So man's the measure of all things. So this was from today's lesson. Postmodernism leads to no hope, or the end result is no hope. Somebody look up Hebrews 11:1. We'll be getting to it in the next couple of weeks in Steve's sermon series.
That's the one on faith.
The Hall of Fame.
Yeah, the whole thing.
I have a question. If everybody, I mean, if postmodernism is there's no hope, why are they fighting for the climate change? Why not just let it, like everything else?
Because it gives them purpose. But that's a very good point. They're being inconsistent, aren't they? You're absolutely right. You should ask them that next time you encounter one of these people.
I've not had the opportunity to meet Greta. I'm looking forward
You
to
should
it.
open a YouTube channel and be an influencer. I think that you would make a really good impact there.
Well, I think when I listen to people specifically about the climate thing, it's like, okay, we have 12 years to live. And I say, okay, then what's the purpose of your running for office? What's the purpose?
Eat, drink, and be merry, right?
Right, and what's the purpose of worrying about the schools being open, closed, or otherwise? School really different. By the time the kid's 12 years old, we'll be all dead. So I mean, it's very inconsistent. You know, their life and their philosophies.
So read Hebrews 11:1 for us.
Hebrews 11:1 is now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen.
So hope. So do you think that an insect or that that squirrel you ran over in the road the other day on your way to work or whatever? Yeah, well, that's. But I mean, do they have hope?
They hope you don't hit them.
They hope they don't kill you. No.
Yeah, they don't really have hope. They don't know.
No.
They don't have.
They don't have the capability of it.
Hope is innately human. And you think back and you see the some of the film footage of the Nazi concentration camps, and you kind of wonder. You have 3 or 4 of these Nazi armed guards and 100 Jews. And you see they march them out into in front of this trench and shoot them out one at a time and just go down the line or whatever. I mean, just tragic, horrible things. But you scratch your head and you kind of wonder, why didn't they all revolt? I mean, even if some of them got shot, there's always in the back of, I think, in the human mind, typically there's this idea that, well, maybe this will turn out differently than what it looks like. And there's always this hope. If it didn't, if there was no hope, or there were no hope, proper grammar, you didn't even correct me then. If there were no hope, then why wouldn't they revolt?
Well, I thought about that a lot when I was working in the juvenile facility, when there were 4 of us working in the unit with 16 and 17 kids. And we basically had them under control. And there were times that it would just cross my mind, if these guys wanted to, they could really nail us. Even though, most of us were pretty good size, they still, some of those kids were as big as we were. And yet, they listened. It's time to line up. It's time to do this.
And why do you think that would be?
Their hope is to get out. Isn't that why?
Yeah, they're wanting to get out. That was the leverage.
But you know what, you go getting back to Nazi Germany, what they did in taking the hope away from those people. Okay, so you get 100 people out here in the yard. What do you first thing they did to them? They stripped them naked, so you don't mount anything. You lose your shame. You lose all. That's how they worked on it. They went into their books on that. We could say that, but they had nothing. And perhaps they thought, I'm better off dead. And I'm not talking. That's just what they got them down to. We have a hope. We've got the scriptures. Well, how are we going to act if they get us up and put a? Our hope is Christ and Christ alone. If you don't have that, you have nothing. And then when you get down to it, that's what they don't have nothing.
So remember when we were talking about John Hus, what was it, the quote that he had said, just as he was being burned at the stake?
Yeah.
Like this one will come, something about Luther.
Yes, I can't remember it now, but I mean, it was inspirational, so go look it up. I apologize if I can't.
You burned his goose. You're gonna, is that what you're getting?
Well, that was after he died, but
Right.
he had said something when he was being executed, but.
You know, one of the things that I think he emphasized there that we need to think about is that art, as he was describing it here, the Impressionists and then into the music, there was no resolution. You know, one of the things about living biblically is there's resolution. You know, we're reconciled. You know, and that in and of itself is a problem. Now, one of the areas I think that has influenced the church is through the music. And there's a lot of Christian popular music that does not resolve. It ends somewhere that doesn't feel right. If you're a musician anyway, you want things resolved. You want that chord to resolve. You want those things to resolve so that they're complete. And there's Christian music that does not
Why
happen.
can't you just repeat the same 3 or 4 words over and over and over a dozen?
Well, you can do that.
Isn't that
Hillsong
Yeah,
does that.
yeah.
Well, here's the thing too, is he was mentioning, Schaefer was mentioning that the word is not romantic. You know what I'm saying? He was trying to push that, saying, you know, a lot, there's no romance. It's not a romantic book. It's a yes, this is, you know, thus says the Lord, this is what you follow, this is how you live your life. If you look at modern Christian music, it's very romantic. I mean, it's sugary, it's actually syrupy, and you really, it's tough to tolerate it even when you hear it.
It's an Isaac Watts song, For Such a Worm As I.
Yeah, there's
You know, just-
none of that, but
Yeah,
the
exactly. You
modern,
can say that today.
you know, youth music, like Hillsong and some of these other, you know, people that write this stuff, it's really sickening, actually, when you get down to it. It's like, he's going to envelop you into his, it gets into this really kind of weird stuff.
Well,
So, and I
there's
think
also
about
the
that.
thing that much of the music you could sing to your girlfriend or your wife
And
as a
some
romantic love song.
Christian artists have done
Yes.
that, and they transition, or
Yeah.
they toggle both and tweak a couple words
Yeah.
here and there, and it's on pop music
Yeah.
now,
Yep.
so.
Right.
So anyway, very quickly, there are 2 more lessons left, and Dennis, I had sent you an email that you might not have gotten to it. There are 2 more lessons left on this series, so I'm going to give you all the option. So there is a series on Luther that Ligonier had put out. It's on YouTube, but it's about an hour and a half long. So what I was thinking is we have 3 weeks to watch it. So the question for you all is, Reformation Sunday is today, obviously. If you would like, we can pick that up next week for the next 3 weeks, and then finish episodes 9 and 10 of this series afterwards. Or we can finish up 9 and 10, and then we would finish up, or we would do the last 3 weeks of the quarter on the Ligonier series. Bear in mind that Thanksgiving is, I think, the last week of that. So
I would think, I would suggest finish
this first.
Because you have in mind how.
Maintain some continuity.
Okay.
We don't want inconsistencies.
We don't want
We don't want to be fragmented.
We must finish because musicians want to see something finished.
Yeah, we finished this, I think, and then.
You remember.
We need to resolve
it. That movie, and Michelangelo and the Pope was coming down, he was like, when will you make it end? When will you make it end? When it's finished.
When it is finished.
Michelangelo. Who was that?
That was Charlton Heston, Ben-Hur.
Yeah.
Agony and the Ecstasy.
So, and you see all that, so none of those movies that he listed there, incidentally, did they win any awards?
I never
I never heard of any of them, right? So, But there were plenty that had wanted words that I kind of thought, well, why? I mean, Sir Lawrence of Arabia,
I think what's interesting though, if you think about this, with the progression of all of this, you know, the guy was sitting at the piano and he had the tick, tick, you know, he's got a clock and then he turned it off. But did you notice that when he stood up, the people clapped for him? And it's like, you clap because he turned on the pocket watch and then he turned it off again? What are you doing?
Well,
You know,
yeah, but I think it was the
think
opening
about
and
it.
closing of the piano.
Oh,
Yes.
maybe that was it. You know, think about it, there's always gonna be people that are gonna follow that, you know, thinking.
And they follow it not because of that is truly art, but because that makes them feel more intellectual.
It's
That's
herd
exactly
mentality.
right, that's exactly right.
I am highly offended that nobody said, I went, ooh, and you.
Well, I clapped. I thought that was.
There are some people who do that during worship, but typically they can't really sing very well.
I mean,
But,
I expected you guys to ask me to come back next week and sing. That's all.
And the Museum of Modern Art in Manhattan, John and I used to go there, and they got these paintings that are absolutely absurd, they're ridiculous, and people are standing around, they're talking to each other, because nobody wants to say, excuse me, back here, this is garbage. Oh, and they go crazy.
I should add one on here for this isn't the inconsistent, these are actually consistent. So what about the Emperor's New Clothes?
That's exactly right, exactly, good point. I probably told this story, but Joan and I were looking at a Van Gogh, and he paints with, I mean, he just, some of his paintings, he just took and squirted the paint on, it was like that thick. And everybody's got a flute of champagne, and they got the red velvet rope in their hair. And I said to Joan, I said to Joan, hey, you can't even see the numbers.
You remember on the briefing?
I just had to break the moment with these people.
You remember on the briefing about the banana?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a perfect example.
Exactly, absolutely.
You know, we were talking here, can you imagine the Pope, and what, we all know where he is theologically.
His beanie's too tight.
But his influence upon millions of souls. He stands up there, so I'm representing the Catholic Church. You people, homosexuality and same-sex marriage is fine. What he is going to stand before God and be judged on that. Because much has been given, what he's going to answer.
Well, that's what you think, but, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother him a bit because he has equal authority
Yeah.
to Scripture.
Right, yeah, I mean, that
That's how they say it.
Until, anyway, somebody
Well,
close us in prayer.
Well, just one last thing. One of the quotes, one of the things I'd like to go back to that he said was to the effect that technique melds worldview. So the technique that you see in art is, or maybe reflects worldview, but it's, you know, it's there.
Absolutely.
And it reflects the worldview.
So tying on to that, your homework is examples of inconsistency in art. So any kind of art, whatever is declared as art. And you can definitely tie in worldview to that. So you may want to go back and say, well, what was, so for example, if I were to say the Fountainhead or something about Ayn Rand, well, where is this inconsistent? What was her worldview on things and why?
What do you mean by inconsistent? Inconsistent with what?
Like the guy was saying that, oh, well, everything is by chance, but then I'm not gonna eat that mushroom. I'm gonna eat
Inconsistent with a biblical worldview.
Inconsistent with their own worldview.
Oh, okay.
Things that would be,
Contradiction.
yes, where they're contradictory. Very good wording. Yeah, absolutely.
Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you that you give us minds that we can use. We pray, Lord, that we would always use them to bring glory and honor to your name. We pray for those that use their minds that do not bring honor and glory to your name. And we think of these folks that we've discussed today and the places that people's minds are. We pray that we would have a great revival so that we would have people thinking and living out a biblical world and life view because they have a relationship with Christ. Lord, we pray that you'll be with us now as we go to worship you this hour, and we thank you that we're having these opportunities to be able to be together in this time. Lord, we ask you to bless again our worship service that's coming up, and we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary.
Mary, we'll see you.
Dennis,
Yes.
what was the homework again?
The homework is examples of inconsistencies.
Examples of what?
Inconsistencies.
Contradiction.
contradictions as people's worldviews are not consistent with what they believe. If that makes sense.
I don't know how they can, that seems like an oxymoron.
Well, yes, it is. If you think about the guy that was painting with the buckets hanging, those buckets have a particular way that they work, yet he says that he's creating something by chance. That would be an inconsistent worldview with the reality of what he's doing. Does that make sense?
It's very dim.
Okay. Well, if you get a chance to watch this again and hear what he says about the inconsistencies between worldview and where people are in their thinking, it might become clearer.
I don't see, it seems to me that the music was, they didn't have any hope. And I don't see an inconsistency.
Well, no, their inconsistency is that they use they'll use music and all that goes into it and sound and things, but act like it has no basis. And that's the issue that Gage, the guy that was doing the piano.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, but his thing is that he felt that everything was by chance, and yet he would go out and eat mushrooms and say, this one could be the one that kills me. Okay, so there's an inconsistency with chance and being able to say, this is the one that could kill me, because that eliminates chance.
Uh-huh.
And that's what we're saying. That's what he's looking for.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
All right. We'll see you the next time.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's easier to know.